X-Perts, released in 1996 for the Sega Genesis, is a spin-off title of Sega's short-lived Eternal Champion series of fighting games, where you assume control of one of three counter-terrorist force members: Ninja Person and singular Eternal Champion fighter Shadow, computer expert codenamed Zachary Taylor, and robotics expert Tashiel Claudel, in a side-scrolling beat-em-up of sorts who must stop terrorists from taking over a secret base, which is done by beating the shit out of said terrorists while completing mission objectives given to you over the course of the game, which mostly involve manipulating computers. Very slowly. This may take a while. X-Perts tries to incorporate some real-time strategy elements to its side-scrolling beat-em-up game, because even though you only control one character at a time, all three members of this team of X-Perts are active in the base in real time. So while you're doing stuff as Shadow, for example, Zach and Tash will also be doing stuff, or they'll be idle, and you can guide them to different locations so that they can do other stuff in the interim, usually relating to your current objective. And when the situation calls for it, for example, one of your characters are attacked, you could pause and switch to take control of that character while your former player is doing their own thing. This encourages the player to be mindful of everything that's going on, especially as it relates to the rest of the team who are doing their parts in taking down this terrorist force. Every so often you'll be given various mission objectives that you have to complete in order to further your overall objective of defeating the terrorist forces who are trying to take over this underwater base. Your objectives mostly entail going to certain parts of the base and hacking into computers in order to disable power systems or slow down production of robot sentries or whatever the case may be. But basically it boils down to beat up some generic bad guys, go to the designated level, hack a computer, and move on to the next objective when you get it. Every few objectives completed, you'll earn a password to move to the next level, which is the same level you've been navigating, except you've got a new area to access, and the objectives gets a little more challenging, as does the opposition, somewhat, sort of. But it ultimately boils down to doing the same old shit over and over and over again, until the game eventually ends, in which you either complete all your objectives and ultimately win the game, all three members of your team are terminated, or the base blows up because you've run out of time, because you are indeed on a 2-hour time limit of sorts. That last bit of information, not so easy to get around. X-Perts has ambition, I'll give it that much. It was trying something different by incorporating some ideas from another genre into the stock beat-em-up formula to create a unique take, and that's something to be commended. Unfortunately, ambition is about the only thing X-Pert has going for it, because the rest of the game is pretty bad. Let's begin with the surface level stuff. Control is stiff and borderline unresponsive, which makes moving your character around an absolute chore. Everything you do seems to have a slight delay before the game responds, whether it be moving around or just turning. And even if response time was quick, your character's movements are still stiff and inflexible. Any game that has a turning animation, which takes an eternity, is already on my personal shit list. I hate that shit. Turning should not take as long as it does here. People can turn around faster than this in real life. Let's move up to combat, which isn't any better. First off, X-Perts is best played, in theory at least, with the 6-button controller. Playing this with a stock 3-button is doable but not recommended, and quite frankly, there are far superior beat-em-ups on the Sega Genesis where 3 buttons are more than enough. Here, I could pop up at least 3 of them on screen. You're welcome. In any event, you've got a basic assortment of abilities: punching, kicking, blocking, pulling out a gun to shoot at things as long as you have the ammo for it, and finally the manipulating of the computer equipment. Yep. Each of the 3 operatives have a variety of moves, including a torture move / finisher type thing, but trying to pull these off seem to be a matter of random chance than anything involving skill or timing. And even if you manage to pull off the torture move, which you're supposed to use to interrogate guards and get them to dispel information, or I guess, it rarely works, which makes it something you just set aside in favor of the basic moves, which at least work half the time, if that. And I'm saying that before hit detection comes into play, which is usually a spotty thing even in the best of brawlers, but X-Perts feels particularly iffy, and not in a good way. And then there's the weapons. Each character has a gun or a long-range weapon that they could use to shoot at things, but the gun has limited ammo, isn't very powerful, and can only be used when your character is stationary. There's no running and gunning to be had here. To be honest, I've rarely used the gun to the point where it becomes an absolute afterthought and I completely forgot about it afterwards. I'm only mentioning it here because I have it in my notes. Or something, I guess. Now it can, and in some cases has been argued, that the combat, as sloppy as it may be, is not the main focus of X-Perts, but rather it's the pseudo-strategy portion of the game, directing your partners to do stuff while you're doing other things. Doing stuff more often than not means you're manipulating computers, and these usually take a long time. And while you're manipulating computers and such for a long time to access restricted areas and such, your other two partners are more than likely doing fuck all in the interim until the computer hacker or whoever is done with his 5-year computer hacking program that allows him to open a door. And during this time, if the computer hacking person is attacked while doing his thing, he'll have to fend them off and go back to doing the computer hacking thing, which is more wasted. Much like the combat, it's very tedious, and when a good chunk of the game relies on this, it starts to wear out its welcome, and trying to decipher which of these computers are the thing you're supposed to be manipulating or groping or whatever the fuck you're doing is also a test of patience because you don't know until you find it. I mean, there's a little prompt that tells you what computer does what, but oh, and by the way, you've got 2 hours to stop the terrorists or else everything goes boom. Dude, you start a new game and the first thing you do is that you have to guide Zachary Taylor to find a computer to open doors. And watching him do whatever the fuck he does with the computer to open a door takes an eternity, and hey, maybe next time send in an agent codenamed William Cranston or Stephen Urkel to get this part done. Then maybe shit will be done much quicker. And if all else fails, get Dr. Spock from Star Wars. I hear he might be an expert in such matters. Like I said, X-Perts had ambition. There's a good idea somewhere around here that's not fully realized because the execution is kinda shit on all fronts. And part of me wants to believe that the game was rushed out before the developers had the chance to fully realize what they had intended for this thing from the get-go. So there's a part of me that feels bad for crapping on X-Perts, but then there's the other part that feels bad for having played it in the first place. As you can see on screen, X-Perts adopts a pre-rendered CGI visual style similar to such graphics featured in games like Donkey Kong Country, Sonic 3D Blast, or Toy Story. Unlike those examples, however, X-Perts is one ugly-looking game. Your player characters look fine, but their movements are stiff and unnatural. The various grunts you face look less fine, look almost similar to each other with minute differences at best, mostly relating to sex, and also move about stiffly and unnaturally. I do like how when they die, they vanish into a column of light. That's actually quite humorous. I'll take it. It's the one positive I could take out of this game, besides the ambition. So that's two things on X-Perts' part. They die in a humorous fashion. The backdrops and settings you'll be exploring are monotonous and ugly, comprising mostly various shades of blue, gray, teal, and occasional bits of white and green thrown in for good measure. Sometimes the game will throw you a bone and show off a red wall or something, but nonetheless, you've got these bland-looking set pieces that look alike and kills any semblance of visual variety, not to mention causing elements to blend in with each other, so looking for a specific piece of equipment that you need to manipulate becomes a guessing game. Just about the only appealing thing to look at, aside from the title screen, is the computer monitor you bring up by pressing the start button, where you can keep track of your agents and look up your mission objectives, and somewhere along the way you'll find the option to actually pause your game. Because remember, even if this screen is up, things are still happening in real time, and the passage of time continues unabated. So don't just press start and doze off only to wake up and find yourself back at the title screen because you forgot to interrupt the mission. Fuck off. But yeah, X-Perts is an ugly looking game, and it's not even a matter of the visuals having aged poorly, because even back in 1996, just by looking at screenshots of this game in an issue of EGM magazine, I thought this game looked like shit. And then there's the audio, which is also pretty bad. You've got a computerized voice that will occasionally drop blurbs and say voice sounds really rough and indecipherable at times. Maybe the game included subtitles because that would have helped. There's also some generic grunt sounds, some other sound effects to go along with the occasional bit of ambience. There's no music other than the title music and whatever. I've had enough. X-Perts had ambition. I've said this a couple of times already, but it bears repeating because if there's one thing to be commended about this game, it's the ambition to attempt something different with this hybrid beat-em-up / real-time strategy formula, and it didn't work. At all. This is a case where you try to combine two completely different things, and the end result is that neither aspect is any good. There is something to the concept, I'll admit that much, but it needed more time to cook and better realize the intentions. This needed more capable hardware, like a Saturn or even a 32X for that matter. Then maybe X-Perts might have had more of a chance. Instead, it was one of the last games to grace the Sega Genesis, positioned largely as a Donkey Kong country killer at the time, when the reality is that regardless of whether it's to be seen as a beat-em-up with strategy elements or a strategy game with beat-em-up aspects, it really doesn't matter because X-Perts is such a miserable experience as a whole, with virtually no redeemable qualities to it, that it would have had a hard time just trying to sniff Donkey Kong Country's ballsack, let alone scratch it, much less kill it. This was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the worst Sega Genesis video games I've had the displeasure of playing. And I've played quite a few Mega-driven stinkers up to this point. There's plenty of better side-scrolling beat-em-ups on the system you could be playing instead of this. Hell, there's plenty of better strategy games you could be playing instead of this. Almost all of them are better and more worthy of your time than X-Perts, which gets the big old poop ribbon. Congratulations, X-Perts. You deserved it. Now go rot in shit.